Hello and welcome. My name is Corey. I work under the brand name with Coach S. I'm a strength conditioning and performance coach and one part of the Nourish Smart coaching team that I'm sure Luke's already told you about. So normally I've got two topics to bring to you today. The first one is the importance of good sleep. Now, normally I would have an entire seminar or lecture to do this one topic, but obviously we're trying to fit in three in one go. So I'm going to try and get this nice, concise, and get through the main points of it as quickly, as smoothly as possible. So we're going to jump straight into it. And my objectives here today are to shock you into why you should be prioritizing your sleep, and then obviously show you how you can start getting better sleep from tonight. As a coach, people often come to me in the last minute when they need problem solving, things like when they've had a death in the family, whether they've had an injury or they've had some bad results from the doctor. And it's always when something's happened and shocked them into making action. So what I want to try and do today is, like I said, I want to shock you into realizing you should be focusing on your sleep now before things start to fall apart later on. So I'm going to start with, we're in an epidemic. And I'm not talking about the coronavirus, I'm talking about the sleep epidemic. Western civilization, industrialized nations consistently sleep less than the required 8 hours a night. And the WHO have actually confirmed this as an epidemic for Western civilization. Use some UK figures for you. Viva did some research into this, and they found that 31% of the adult population in the UK believe they suffer from insomnia, and 48% agree they don't get the required 8 hours sleep. Now, the insomnia stats are a little bit funny because a lot of people that think they've got insomnia haven't actually got insomnia. Insomnia is defined as someone who gives themselves every opportunity to sleep, but they can't sleep. Whereas most people will claim insomnia when they're still playing on their phones late at night and they're not winding themselves down, not giving themselves a good bedtime. So that's a bit off, but it still shows us that sleep is an issue in this country and it needs to be addressed and it needs to be made a bit more of a priority. But yeah, why is this a big deal? Why is this a big deal and why should we be focusing on it? And how I'm going to explain that to you is by looking at the extremes of things. Sleep or die. It's quite as simple as that. And we know this because of a condition called fatal familial insomnia, which is a rare genetic condition that begins with insomnia and progresses to the complete inability to sleep. Quality of life rapidly deteriorates over a 9-month period before inevitable death. Now, you probably haven't got this condition, but what it does show us is that when we don't sleep, we will die and quality of life drops drastically. Another thing to highlight, drink driving, terrible thing. One, because it's entirely preventable, and two, it's not just the person who's driving at risk, it's the people that are around him are at risk too. What people don't realise is that drowsy driving is actually more responsible for more traffic accidents, more road traffic accidents, driving accidents, than what drink driving is. And that's probably down to the reason drink driving happens mainly on certain occasions of the year, and drowsy driving happens throughout the year. They actually did some studies into this and found that if you were awake for 20 hours straight, you would have the same impairment as someone who is above the legal blood alcohol marker, which is quite a shocking stat when you think about it. And the last thing I want to talk to you about is the time zone phenomenon. And this still blows me away anytime I mention it. Every year, we have that beautiful, awful thing where we gain an hour or lose an hour. Daylight saving time. What happens in the spring when we lose an hour is we see a 24% increase in heart attacks. In the fall, when we gain an hour, we see a 21% reduction in heart attacks. And that same thing happens across road traffic accidents, car crashes, and suicides, showing that 1 hour of sleep can indeed be the tipping point for some people's lives. Sleep and the immune system. When we get stressed, we know our immune system drops and we start to get sick more. When sleep quality drops and quantity drops, we get sick more. And this is due to a reduction in our good cells activity. These things here are our killer cells, and our killer cells' job is to hunt down and destroy the bad diseases and cells in our body. I like to think of these guys as the Avengers. They seek out and destroy the bad guys from our body to keep us safe. But what happens when we consistently sleep less than the required amount is we can see a reduction of up to 70% of these cells' activity, leaving us wide open for illnesses, including cancer. Sleep will become more impulsive and make bad decisions. This is the frontal lobe, and the frontal lobe is responsible for our perceptions and our sociability and social functioning. When we drink alcohol, which is a sedative by the way, it sedates this prefrontal cortex in the frontal lobe that's responsible for those actions. And we've all been at a party when someone's got overly drunk and overreacted to some silly situation, or someone's ended up crying. Whether that was you or someone else, it's happened. We know that's what happens, and that's because it sedates the prefrontal cortex, this part of the front of the brain. When we drowsy drive, the same thing is happening. When we've not slept enough, it affects this part of the brain, which is the impairment that then causes the knock-on effect to drowsy driving and then the accidents. The Chernobyl disaster is actually a great example of this, which is a great TV series, by the way. If you haven't watched it, I'd watch it. But the Chernobyl workers, they worked 14-hour shifts with very short spaces of time between to get rest. We know that the Chernobyl disaster happened because of human error, and it is very likely that because they didn't sleep well, they made bad decisions because of it. So it definitely contributed to this terrible, terrible incident. So there was a study done on workers, being this is a work chat, we need to get this one in. They took people that slept well and people that didn't sleep well. The guys that slept well, slept the required 8 hours a night, they provided more solutions with better accuracy compared to the guys that didn't sleep well. Simple as that. But the best part about this is they took the guys that didn't sleep well and didn't sleep the required 8 hours a night, that produced less solutions and with lower accuracy, and made them sleep better. And the change happened. They performed better. They slept better, they performed better, which shows that you can instantly start changing your performance just by making sure you get a good night's sleep. There's so much stuff that sleep plays a role in. It's a hugely studied subject. I get consistently above 200 notifications every Sunday of sleep-related studies. We spend a third of our lives at least sleeping, which is why it's such an important topic, and there's so many things we want to know about how sleep affects us. And this just shows how big of a subject and how well researched it is. Every single week I will get something along those lines, those numbers. So let's get straight into showing you how you can sleep better. That's me there wearing an EEG band, which is basically a device that measures your brain waves while you're asleep. Technology is amazing. It came on leaps and bounds. Normally, you would have to go into a sleep lab and get all sorts of electrodes popped across your head, and you'd have to sleep in a strange environment for a full night to get a detailed analysis of how you sleep. Technology's moved on now. We can do this in the home, and we can use that information to then make interventions based on the results that we get. So let's get into the 12 topics that we can do to make sure we get a better night's sleep. And the first one is probably the biggest and most important one, and I would make sure you make this a priority over absolutely any of the rest of them, and that's a sleep schedule. We are habitual creatures. When we are waking up at the same time and going to bed at the same time, we are in absolute harmony with ourselves, and going to sleep and getting up will just become natural instinct. Me at the minute, I get up at 7:44 every single morning, without a doubt. Not a minute later, not a minute earlier. 7:44 is when my body knows it needs to wake up. That might be too early or too late for you guys, I don't know, but that's just where I'm sitting at the minute. Cool. So second, no exercise. No exercise in the evening. So when you exercise, it lights up your brain, which is great. We want that. But if that happens too close to bedtime, our brain's going to be too active and it's going to take a little bit of time for us to wind down. So try and keep your exercise at least 3 hours before you go to sleep. 3, avoid caffeine and nicotine. So caffeine and nicotine are stimulants. They're there to stimulate the brain. They'll make it a lot harder for you to go off to sleep, but if you do get off to sleep, your brain will still be working because it's still processing those stimulants. Avoid alcohol before bed. And we've already spoke about alcohol being a sedative and it sedates the frontal cortex. Sedating your brain and sleeping are completely different things. When you sleep, you're entering a brain restorative function that restores your body. When you drink alcohol, your body struggles to get that restorative functioning. So don't drink alcohol before bed. Avoid large meals, drinks before bed. This is quite an obvious one. You don't want to be getting up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet. So just try and make sure you drink and eat a couple of hours before you go to bed so you can go to the toilet first. 6, check medicines. This is often one that people miss. A lot of medicines do affect your sleep, including things like blood pressure medication. So always check the packet and see if it affects your sleep and maybe try taking that medication earlier in the day. 7, no naps after 3 p.m. During the day, you build up a sleep pressure. It's like a pressure pot that's slowly building and building. And as you get to that evening, it's at its peak point, and that's when your body goes, right, I'll need to go to sleep now. If you nap for longer than 20-30 minutes, you will start to alleviate this sleep pressure, which is why I always say, anytime before 3 p.m, keep your naps to 20 minutes and none after 3 p.m, because you don't want to affect your ability to go to sleep that evening. 8, relax before bed. And we're all awful at this. Everyone has their moments. Phones buzzing off, drama in the group chat. We don't want that before going to bed. We want our brains and our body to start chilling out and relaxing so we can get into a nice, smooth sleep. Hot bath or shower. This is a good tip as well. Our body temperature peaks and then dips off at the end of the day as we start to cool down. That's when our body knows it needs to go to sleep. When we have a hot bath or shower, it helps our body release that heat so we can cool ourselves quicker. So we can get into bed, we're in a cooler position to get off to sleep. Nice and simple one, dark, cool, gadget-free bedroom. We know this. We don't want phones buzzing off, affecting us and distracting us from waking up and then clicking on screens for longer. We want it dark so the light's not affecting our eyes and making sure that we stay awake. And we don't want it too hot either, because like I said before, if we're too hot and we're not giving ourselves a chance to cool down, that's going to affect us getting off to sleep and staying asleep too. 11, get good sunlight exposure. So our skin is an amazing thing. Vitamin D, we need it, especially in the day, because when our skin recognises the sun's on it, it knows when it needs to be awake. If we don't have that, your body will struggle. When should I be awake? When should I be going to sleep? Sunlight exposure helps that regulation. 12, don't lie in bed awake. So stressing in the bedroom is the worst thing that you can do. You don't want to associate your bedroom with a stressful place. It's there for 2 things. Sleep, sex, that's it. If you are stressing and sitting in bed stressing, counting the hours that you've got left till your alarm clock goes off the next morning, all that's doing is stressing you out even more. Leave, go to another room for 5-10 minutes, read for 5 minutes, lay down, just relax on the sofa. That's the best thing you can do in those situations to then calm yourself down, smooth yourself in, to then get yourself back off to sleep. Lying in bed stressing is not going to help. And I think that's everything. Cool. That's what I've got on sleep for you today. I hope you've enjoyed that. If you've got any questions, feel free to get in touch on any of those platforms. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I think I'm passing you over to Luke now. So crack on.